Praise God. We're happy to begin another Bible study session, and we're continuing our study in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7 through 9. We're resuming. We had concluded on chapter 7 on last week, and we want to pick up where we left off. And remember now, this whole topic here is dealing with coping in a wicked world. Coping in a wicked world. Last week we dealt with wisdom and moderation helps you cope. This week we want to conclude in knowing wickedness will not prevail helps you cope. And chapter 9 says knowing our destiny is in God's hands helps you cope. And so let's just get started. We're going to go right to chapter 8. And knowing wickedness will not prevail helps you cope. This is a very, very good advice that Solomon is giving us. Submitting to authority. Authority is something that our culture sometimes is lacking. It's so easy now for our society to really put down authority. And what Solomon is sharing is that we must submit to authority. Why? It helps us cope. And what he's trying to share with us is that sometimes you think that circumventing authority is going to prolong your life or help make your life better, but you're not doing that. And so let's kind of read verse 1 and 2. It says, how wonderful to be wise, to analyze and interpret things. Wisdom lights up a person's face, softening its harshness. Obedience to the king. Obey the king, since you vowed to God that you would. So we must obey executive authority. Paul tells us in the book of Romans chapter 13, it says, submit to the higher powers, for every power that be is of God. And so we must submit to the higher powers, and we're not to shun our civic duty, because the authority from the powers are backed by even a greater power, and we can't resist it. So the person who's wise will obey and will not be punished, and will always find a way to do what is right, even when in trouble. It is those people who are deceived, thinking that they can shun their civic duty and not obeying authority, thinking that it will prolong their life if they do so. See, oftentimes when the right person is not in office, we don't like the certain political candidate, whatnot. We think being on the opposite end, even if on the opposite end is an evil, we think siding with the evil side is actually helping to prolong your life or to improve it, simply because you don't like the one who's in authority right now. Well, Solomon is saying, no, don't side with the wicked side. Wickedness cannot rescue the wicked. Wicked power cannot hold back death. This is what he's saying in verses 7 and 8. Let's read verse 7 and 8. Indeed, how can people avoid what they don't know is going to happen? None of us can hold back our spirit from departing. None of us has the power to prevent the day of death. There is no escaping that obligation, that dark battle. And in the face of death, wickedness will certainly not rescue the wicked. And so we must submit to authority. And again, this is one of the easier things to do, that people tend to circumvent authority, simply because they think circumventing authority will help prolong their life. Because sometimes we circumvent authority because we're so fed up with wickedness that we are just desperate that we will even side with what is wicked, simply to try to get rid of wickedness. And it's an oxymoron. It's a contradiction. Wickedness cannot rescue the wicked. And so don't become so desperate in trying to cope in this life and siding with the wicked, continue to submit to authority. That's what Solomon is trying to give us, this great advice in verses 1 through 8. Then, verses 9 through 17, he contrasts wickedness and righteousness. Let's read verses 9 through 12. It says, I have thought deeply about all that goes on here under the sun, where people have the power to hurt each other. I have seen wicked people buried with honor, yet they were the very ones who frequented the temple and are now praised in the same city where they committed their crimes. This too is meaningless. When a crime is not punished quickly, people feel it is safe to do wrong. But even though a person sins 100 times and still lives a long time, I know that those who fear God will be better off. So, Solomon, he's observing here, the wicked people are praised and buried with honor in the same place where they committed their crimes. He's noticing how wicked people are praised and buried in honor, and oftentimes those who are not wicked, they are not praised. They go unnoticed. And sometimes the wicked are so praised, they are honored in the same place where they commit their crimes. Now this is a crying shame. Again, this has a tendency of make people feel as though wickedness is going to prevail. And it's not going to prevail. And another thing that Solomon observes is people feel okay to do wickedness when crimes are not punished immediately. And we live in that type of our penal system, our law and justice system sometimes acts very slow. Many people who have committed a crime, sometimes it's been months, maybe a year or two before they're tried. And sometimes this slow to punish gives the massive population a feeling of that, well, maybe it's okay to do wrong, because they're not going to do anything about it. At least they're not going to do anything about it very quickly. And sometimes people have a feeling as though that maybe perhaps I can get away with it. Maybe because if it goes on long enough, if they allow it to go on too long, maybe I'll get away with it. And I think that's what happens. And so, again, here's that other side of the wickedness. But here's what Solomon said on the contrasting side. The righteous, those who fear God, are still better off than those who sin 100 times and live a long life. So no matter what we see the wicked, they may be getting praise, they may be buried with honor, but the righteous are still better off, even if those wicked people sin 100 times and live a long, long life. They're better off. Okay, why? Here's the conclusion. The wicked may live a long time, but will not prosper and not have enjoyable days because they don't fear God. How often do we see people who have money, they're rich, but they still don't seem like they're enjoying life? And the reason being is because there's no fear for God. God has made man to fear him. Fear in this sense not mean to be afraid, but to be in awe of God or to reverence God. God has made us that way. And so Solomon concludes the wicked, they may live a long time, but guess what? They will not prosper and not have enjoyable days because they don't fear God. It's God-fearing people that will enjoy life. The injustice of life is that the wicked are treated like they're good and the good are treated like they're wicked. Now this is another injustice. And let's read that. Verses 13 to 17 says, the wicked will not prosper, for they do not fear God. Their days will never grow long like the evening shadows. And this is not all that is meaningless in our world. In this life, good people are often treated as though they were wicked, and wicked people are often treated as though they were good. This is so meaningless. So I recommend having fun, because there is nothing better for people in this world than to eat, drink, and enjoy life. That way they will experience some happiness along with all the hard work God gives them under the sun In my search for wisdom and in my observation of people's burdens here on earth, I discover that there is ceaseless activity day and night. I realize that no one can discover everything God is doing under the sun. Not even the wisest people discover everything, no matter what they claim. So now, what is Solomon sharing with us here? We've already shared with verse 13, the wicked may live a long time, but they're not going to prosper because they don't fear God. But verse 14, he says, the injustice of life is that the wicked are treated like they are good, and the good are treated like they are wicked. And he's basically saying that because this life is unjust, people enjoy life and happiness with the hard work God gives. So we're living in an unjust world, okay? There's nothing we can do about it. We can't correct it. And again, one of the biggest fallacies is that we think that we can correct this world. Now, this doesn't mean we just don't try to live peaceably, because the Bible tells us that if all possible that lies within us, we ought to try to live peaceably with all men. However, we can beat ourselves up, and you have all of these well-meaning groups out there, social groups, that believe that, man, they have the answer to correct society's ills. During the presidential elections, all the candidates are going to come out with their plans to say that, man, I have the perfect plan that says that we're going to get us out of this mess. Nothing has done it. And so what Solomon is saying, because there's injustice of life, because of this high inequity, good treated like they're evil or wicked, and the wicked are treated like they're good, man, we can't correct the way this life is. So just enjoy life, and enjoy life and happiness with the hard work He's given us, and just enjoy it. And he concludes in verse 16 and 17. It is useless, and it's too much activity in trying to understand God's ways concerning this life. You can't understand God's ways. What did Isaiah tells us in Isaiah, I think 55? He says, my ways are not your ways, says the Lord. My ways are higher than your ways. We can't fully understand God's ways. So we can't understand the injustice of this life. It's useless of trying to figure it out. What we have to do is try to live in it, try to enjoy it the best that we can. And it is this knowing of this understanding, it helps us cope. Because again, this is all designed to help us cope in this uncertain, wicked world. So knowing wickedness will not prevail, it helps us cope in this wicked and uncertain world. The wicked will not live a long time. They will not prosper. So don't stop enjoying life because you're thinking that, man, this is just going to be forever. No, the wicked things will not last forever. And this is such good news, especially in our country now. We're seeing a lot of wickedness going on. We see wicked lifestyles being elevated. Just a lot of sinfulness. People living together, same-sex issues just rising all over the land. All of these type of things, these are ungodly lifestyles that God has not condoned. And we see it, and sometimes we start feeling, man, this stuff is just going to take over. God is letting us know through His Word, it will not last a long time. So guess what? Solomon said, man, enjoy life. Don't stop living. Don't become so despondent and thinking that you can no longer enjoy. And this helps you cope. And so this concludes chapter 8, and I hope this was a great blessing to you. God bless.